Brock Lesnar's time in the UFC has been fascinating. Unlike other chumps who would try to get in the octagon and have their heads well and truly knocked off, the Beast has always held his own, even when his own stomach was trying to eat him alive. He's not the only pro wrestler to try such a jump, however, and respect to anyone who does. It's a terrifying and intimidating switch to make. I'm Simon from WhatCulture. This is 10 wrestlers who became MMA fighters. Number 10. Bobby Lashley. Bobby Lashley is responsible for one of the best Vince McMahon stories ever. Rumour has it while he was training at OVW, his coaches would try and keep him hidden from Vince, because they knew as soon as he saw him, that'd be that. Up to the main roster he would go even if he wasn't ready. Lashley was just that big. And what do you know? That's exactly what happened, and Bobby looked like a bag of potatoes being thrown around a WWE ring. The man is a monster though, and with the raw strength and power we can only dream about, was the perfect fit for MMA. It's no surprise then that after he left the WWE in 2008, he tried his hand at a shoot fight, destroying Josh Franklin in under a minute. His next 5 contests ended up in a similar fashion. All these years later and he still only lost twice, and does manage to juggle both pro wrestling and MMA. Good for you, Bobby. Number 9. Bam Bam Bigelow. Take a look at Bam Bam Bigelow. You would never mess with that, would you? And if you ever did, he would have snapped you in half like a twig. And then you'd just be some dead twig. Clearly Bam Bam thought the same, because despite being a pro wrestler for almost a decade in 1996, he was sure he could compete where MMA was concerned. Having his one and only fight for Organisation New Japan, he took on Kimo Leopoldo, and got choked out in the first round. He never fought again. Number 8. Minoru Suzuki. Forget making the jump to MMA, Minoru Suzuki practically invented the damn thing, with his fists and his head. As he competed in pro wrestling matches that had a shoot-style twist, he witnessed a legitimate contest when Don Nayaka Nilsson and Ken I'm Always Mad Shamrock locked horns. The match was a huge success and attracted a boatload of people to the Tokyo Dome, which got Suzuki thinking. Seeing an opportunity to steer the industry in a new direction, himself, Shamrock and Masakatsu Funaki formed Pancrase, one of the world's first MMA organisations. Given it poured forth from his brain, he also partook in some action, racking up 29 victories in a decade-long career. Number 7. Ludwig Borger. The first coming of Brock Lesnar, Ludwig Borger already had a reputation as a show fighter and a boxer in his native Finland. He also used to beat people up in bars, and from the sound of things, was very good at it. His approach to fighting was the perfect fit for strong-style pro wrestling, and Ludwig soon found himself in NJPW facing off, and often winning, against the likes of Shinya Hashimoto. But then Vince McMahon called. Despite his tough guy persona, Borger was only ever going to be an American-hating heel in the early 90s WWF. And that's exactly how he was portrayed. He looked like a monster though, and officials within the company thought so highly of him they even penciled him in for a title reign. Unfortunately, this never panned out. An ankle injury scuppered such plans, and by 1997 he had left pro wrestling behind for a one and done in the UFC, where he was defeated by a plucky fighter known as Randy Couture. Seemingly never getting himself back on track, Borger would spiral into a world of drink and drugs before killing himself in 2010. Number 6. Batista. Man, Batista can do it all, can't he? Pro wrestler, movie star, MMA fighter. If we were all as versatile as the Animal, the world would be a better place. After leaving the WWE in 2010, however, Big Dave did decide to try his hand at MMA. And I say try, because fate seemed to be dead set against it. At first he wanted to fight for Strikeforce, but when the company was bought by UFC bigwig Zuffa, that fell through. Next he wanted to punch Rashad Evans in the face for a bit under the CES promotion, but that crumpled when Evans was put in jail. Finally, on the 6th of October 2012, he was able to maul someone, beating veteran Vince Lucero in the first round. He may not have fought since, but that means his record is 1-0. Undefeated. Number 5. Ken Shamrock. Ken Shamrock is just one big ball of confusion when it comes to the world of MMA and pro wrestling. First, he wanted to be a wrestler, training under Buzz Sawyer. Then he went to Japan to compete in the UWF, which aimed to mix both styles together. After forming the aforementioned Pancrase promotion, he fell out with everyone there, which isn't surprising given he's well angry all the time, and eventually found super fame with the UFC from 1993. But then the WWF showed interest, so he went and did that for a few years. And now he's fighting for Bellator. Make up your mind, Ken. Number 4. Bart Gunn. Oh man, remember that time Bart Gunn was put in a shoot fight with Butterbean at WrestleMania 15 and almost had his lips punched off his mouth? That was the worst. But his victories in the Brawl for All series before then obviously did inspire him somewhat, because 2 years after he retired from wrestling at the age of 46, he tried his hand at a couple of MMA fights, winning his first and losing the other. Dude was so bodacious. Number 3. Daniel PUDER. If you've never seen it, Go and watch Daniel PUDER versus Kurt Angle from Tough Enough 4. As the two tangle in the ring, PUDER actually gets the better of Angle, an Olympic gold medalist, by clamping him in a Kimura lock, forcing referee Jimmy Corderas to freak out and count PUDER's shoulders to the mat. Otherwise, Kurt was saying goodbye to that arm. A superb amateur wrestler and enjoying a brief stint as an MMA fighter prior to WWE's reality show, he returned to the sport after he was chewed up and spat out by pro wrestling and managed to remain undefeated until he decided to retire in 2011. Number 2. CM Punk. There he is. There's the guy you've all been waiting for. The hero that is CM Punk. While he hasn't made his debut in the octagon yet, there's no doubt his jump has been one of the most talked about. Everyone wants to know how he's going to perform. At this juncture though, there's no way to know. Punk has always been a fan of both the sport and training jiu-jitsu. That doesn't mean he's going to go smash someone's teeth in. It doesn't mean he's going to get his teeth smashed in either. It's all a waiting game at the moment. With all that said, you've got to respect the man. Win or lose, Phil Brooks has taken on a huge challenge, especially as he's now in his late 30s. That's no small feat. Number 1. Dan Severn. Yes, it's the Beast and his grey t-shirt. Severn didn't give a flying monkeys about the rules back in the day. Already NWA champion, he just decided he wanted to try his hand in the world of mixed martial arts, so went and debuted for the UFC. Furthermore, when he captured the UFC Super Fight title after beating Mr. Rage Ken Shamrock at UFC 6, he held both that and the NWA belts above his head. What a legend. Continuing on with great success over the years, he wound up in the then WWF in 1998, but as we all know, was never used in any great capacity despite being more legit than anyone else on the roster. He was so committed to keeping up all activities though, he negotiated a deal where he'd only do 60 dates for McMahon. That's how much it all meant to him, and he's easily the most successful MMA fighter on this list. Let us know of any shoot fighters that have towed the line in the comments below, and then don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Then you can come and find me digitally on Twitter at SimonMiller316. I'm Simon from WhatCulture, and I'll talk to you again soon.
Have you ever wanted to learn everything about the man with the greatest moustache in the history of combat sports? I'm talking of course about Dan the Beast Severn. He's one of the most recognized fighters in MMA history, holding UFC gold and NWA gold at the same time. And in this book, Realest Guy in the Room, we swear it's not about Enzo Amore, he unloads on all of it. His humble beginnings, his rise to the top of MMA, his whole thing with Ken Shamrock, his time in WWF. So if you're young and have never heard of him, you owe it to yourself to pick this book up and learn a lot about a man who was very, 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 very good at hitting people. You can pick it up at shop.whatculture.com. Follow the link in the description.